I lived in a quiet American town. When I was a child on my way home from school, I saw a German Volkswagen T1 minivan. This car belonged to a young couple, and they lived across the street from my house. The couple always looked happy and often went on trips in the minivan. Soon the couple got into a car accident. According to the driver of the lorry, the minivan was traveling at a great speed and swaying in different directions when the minivan started to catch up with the lorry, which was slowly driving to the meeting. This minivan, as if something inexplicable, in an instant sharply pushed to the meeting, and it flew into the lorry. The couple had no chance of survival and died at the scene. It was a few years later. I was in grade 12. It was winter. On Monday, my friend and classmate Emma did not come to school. After lessons, I decided to drop in on her. She opened the door, and the first thing that caught my eye was her colored hair. She's experimenting with her looks. Decided to experiment. Why didn't you come to school today? I bombarded her with questions. Emma was surprisingly taciturn, even though she usually liked to talk about anything. She remained silent and depressed. At last I managed to rouse her, so here's what she said. Saturday night, me and my boyfriend Ethan were out walking and talking about this and that, and there were hardly any people around at that hour. And it was winter again. It was windy, light snow, and the wind was gradually picking up and starting to blizzard. Ethan and I wandered to the edge of town. We were walking right along the motorway. The road was lit by dim streetlights, and there was a forest in front and behind us, the road essentially enclosing the forest. So there we are walking along with Ethan, talking, and suddenly we hear a car noise. Not very loud, but distinct. We decided to let it pass. We are walking along the track. We moved to the side of the road and turned around, and there it is a few meters away from us in the back. A minivan, all disfigured from a car crash and covered with dust mixed with rust. A chill ran down my spine. The minivan drove slowly behind us, making iron scraping noises as it did so. Why isn't it moving, Ethan? How should I know? The guy said. I was scared, to be honest. It was weird. It was night. What was a broken down old minivan doing on the street? Where would you drive it to? And it's so slow. Then it hit me. Maybe he wants us to let him pass. I mean, he doesn't want to overtake us. Well, let's stop, Ethan said. We stood by the side of the road, waiting for the car to pass us, but the minivan stopped. It didn't go any further, and then I was really scared. Ethan, I'm scared. I clung to the guy. We just stood there looking at the car. My boyfriend didn't say anything. Finally, he said, let's go. We moved, and the minivan went too. Halt, said Ethan. Stopped and stared at the minivan, and the car stopped just like us. He's joking, the guy said uncertainly. Ethan, let's go faster. I'm not comfortable. We walked with a quick step. The minivan also increased its speed. Fear was growing in me more and more every second. I was already afraid to turn around and see this mutilated car. It was like the minivan was following us, and at night, when there are no souls, it's creepy. Let's cross the road and go into the backyards of the houses, Ethan said. I'm scared, I answered. Let's go, or do you want to walk here all night and reach the forest? He pulled me by the arm, and I felt something in my gut. I yanked my hand away from his arm and stood by the curb as he started to cross the road towards the houses. The minivan sped off, hit my boyfriend, and sped along the road at its usual speed. I fell from surprise in a snowdrift, and the wheel cover of the car went somewhere to the trees. Also, the minivan left a long trail of unnaturally crooked wheels and scratches on the road. My legs felt like cotton wool, and I was shaking with terror. I ran over to Ethan, and he was lying on the road, saying it hurt. His legs hurt. His legs hurt. I ran to the nearest house, called the house. An ambulance was called, and Ethan was taken to the hospital. He turned out to have fractured both legs. I listened to my friend's story, but I didn't believe her at first. I thought she was playing a trick on me, making up a story that maybe Ethan had slipped and broken his legs, or that they had dreamed it all up. But then again, a group hallucination isn't very likely. I had different theories, and I finally surmised that yes, there was a minivan. But the driver was having fun. Maybe he wanted to scare them, or even more realistically, he was drunk, insane, crushed Ethan. You don't understand. You're just sitting there, Emma replied. Yeah, I dyed my hair because I'm sure I'll be gray after tonight. I looked through the side window of the minivan as it sped off and hit my boyfriend, and there was no one behind the wheel. The interior was empty. And then Emma and I came home from work, and the coroner came with her. And what I heard was unexplainable. According to the coroner, the minivan had been parked in the same place behind the house that day as it had been after the couple's deaths. It hadn't been driven anywhere. It couldn't even be started. Emma told everything as it was, confirmed her story and Ethan in the hospital, and why would they lie? I was convinced of the truth of their story in the spring, in March, when I was skiing in the country with my brother. Look, Olivia. I found a car part, some kind of disc. My brother chuckled and pointed down towards the trees. I looked, and the tangled wheel cover was lying in the grass. On this day, I was transporting equipment in a company-owned van. I had to do it at night and drive almost across the state to unload it. Most of the trip was on desert roads. It would take many hours. Eventually, I began to tire of the trip, and so I started looking for a place to spend the night. Over the horizon, I saw a small parking lot, and a car was parked on the side of the road. The parking lot would have been a good place for me to stop, but looking at the car, I felt that something was wrong here. I put the van behind the car. It was a 1996 Mitsubishi Galant. I got out of the van and walked over to the car. I knocked on the window but got no response. I leaned over a little to look inside the tinted glass of the car, but saw no one there. I decided to do the same with the other 3 windows. After looking at all the seats, I made sure there was no one in the interior of the car. For some reason, I felt useful that night, and I wanted to get to the bottom of this and go to bed. So I went back to my van and got a flashlight out of the toolbox in front of the passenger seat. It was a powerful flashlight that was so bright it could hurt the eyes of anyone who looked at it. As soon as I turned it on the side of the road, I saw what looked like an abandoned gas station. I guess I didn't notice it before because it was very dirty and covered in a huge amount of dust. There was no concrete on it. There were only 2 gas stations and a small building behind them. It would be logical to assume that those who came by car would have been in this building. I walked up to the front door, which was permanently locked, and with a flashlight illuminated a decent-sized portion of the room inside. I think it was a small convenience store that is commonly found at many gas stations. Unsurprisingly, on such a road, the operation of this gas station didn't last long. I yelled out to make my presence known, that I was there to help. Then I heard what was probably the scraping of shoes on the floor on the opposite side of the room. I called out again, offering my help if it was needed. Then I heard a heavy and long whisper, but I couldn't hear it. Then I heard heavy breathing in the corner of the room. It was enough to make me get the hell out of there. That's what I heard walking to my van. I didn't realize what had happened or if it was real. I quickly ran to my van and called 911 because honestly I was too scared to go back to that building. They asked for the exact location and I couldn't tell them. All I said was that I was near an abandoned gas station on a deserted road. I was asked to stay on the line so I could better describe my location. But all of a sudden the car in front of me started up and started speeding down the deserted road. I didn't even see him get into his car. It was very dark and I was too distracted and shocked to notice. I ran back into the building to see if anyone else was there. Maintaining the 911 line, I went to the back of the building where I heard voices and breathing, and I was very distressed to see a fresh pool of blood on the floor. I could only imagine what was going on. I explained over the phone that I thought I had stumbled upon a crime scene. Eventually, they were able to send a team of state police officers to the scene, and they asked for any information. I couldn't give a license plate number, what the suspect looked like. I think all I said was it was a late 1990s black Mitsubishi Galant, and I heard a man whispering before I heard a woman screaming, and also that there was no body when they left the building, but I have a few ideas what might have happened. I'm sure the state police took some blood samples and more, but I couldn't be much more help. Unfortunately, I didn't have a video recorder at the time to get a license plate, but just the next week I installed a video recorder in my assigned van. That night was one of those events that happens very rarely in life, and one should always be prepared for them.